Have you ever wished you could eliminate the banding effect when you're working rows of single crochets? Or that you could create a more cohesive look when you're working flat tapestry crochet? In this video, I'm going to share a cool hack that will help with this. And no, it's not fastening on and off for each row, but I will say that's a great option if you decide that this hack isn't for you. Now for this technique, we're going to be carrying our yarn back and forth for each row, which will give us that consistent look that we're going for. Now this does mean that you will be using up more yarn, so I would recommend this method for smaller projects like ornaments, dishcloths, or amigurumi patterns. So let's get started with the basic concept before we move on to the tapestry crochet. This is a sample of working your single crochets, turning after each row, which gives you a slight banding effect. And here's what it'll look like if we stay on the same side. Essentially, this gives you the same look as if you were working single crochets in the round. And just another quick sample, this was worked with single crochets yarn over, but if you want a crisscross effect, you can do your single crochets with a yarn under. And I'll show you what I mean later in the video. To begin, create your first row as you normally would. I'm just going to chain about 10 or 11 here. And now I'm just working a row of single crochets. And here's where the fun begins. Instead of chaining one and turning, we're just going to remove the hook from the yarn and add a stitch marker. Now one thing that is important here is just to keep an eye on your tension here. You don't want this to get too tight and you don't want it to get too loose. Just keep in mind that you're going to be putting your hook back into this loop later on. Next, we're just going to carry our yarn all the way back to the beginning. Grab your hook and pull the yarn through the first stitch. Just stretch everything out, making sure that that stretch of yarn is parallel to the stitches. Quick tip here, if you're working on a bigger project, you can use little clips, baby clothespins, or even hairpins to help keep that yarn in place. For the samples that you see in the video and for this here, I'm not going to worry about that. You really don't need it for this size. Next, just grab your working yarn, chain one. This can serve as your first single crochet if you like, but I do like to add a proper single crochet into the same stitch, just like I do when I'm turning my work. So in that same stitch, making sure to go under that yarn that's behind, pull your yarn through, and create a single crochet. And now just work your single crochets as you normally would, making sure to sandwich that piece of yarn in the back. When you reach the end, add a single crochet in that last stitch. Before you yarn over and pull through, go ahead and grab that last stitch that you made and add it to the hook. Yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. That's going to close that stitch as well as give you that single crochet. And that's all you're going to do. You're just going to repeat this row after row. Remove the hook, add a stitch marker, carry your yarn over to the beginning, pull that yarn through, fix your tension, chain one, work a stitch into that first single crochet, and then continue on all the way across. Working that last stitch. Before you yarn over, grab that little stitch from the beginning, add it to your hook, yarn over, and pull through all 3 loops. If you want your single crochets to have that crisscross effect, let me show you how to do that. I'm back at the beginning. chain 1. Instead of yarning over like this, you're going to yarn under. That means you're going to take your hook and go over the top of that yarn and then pull it through. Then you can work as normal to close it. Go in, yarn under the hook to pull it through, and finish as normal. Last stitch. And we're done. So once you get the hang of that, it's really easy to apply it to flat tapestry crochet, and it'll give you the same look as if you were working in the round. For this demonstration, I'm going to show you how I applied it to this simple heart pattern. I'm not going to go into great detail from start to finish with this sample because I basically just want to show you the key areas that the method is applied. But if you aren't familiar with tapestry crochet, let me know in the comments if you'd like me to make a video tutorial. It's a lot of fun, and I have some tips that I think you'll find useful. Just like before, create your first row of single crochets as normal, and now we're ready to get started. So I've added my stitch marker into that very first loop, carrying the yarn to the beginning. And now I'm going to pull the yarn through the first stitch, making sure my tension is good. Chain 1. Now for tapestry crochet, I do prefer to work into the back loop only. That's just a personal preference. If you don't want to work into the back loop only, if you want to work into both loops, then you'll get something that looks like this. As you can see, the single crochets are a little bit more consistent here. When you're working the back loop only, you'll get this little line here, but then your shape will be a little bit tighter. But like I said, it's completely up to you. Going under both loops, going under back loop only. For the chain 1, I did go under both loops, but now I'm going to go into the back loop only for that first single crochet into the same stitch. Make sure that you have captured that yarn in the back. And now I'm just going to continue my way across. So I'm getting ready to bring in my next color, so I'm going to finish this last stitch with the new color. This is where it gets a bit tricky, but if you're very comfortable with tapestry crochet, this won't be a big deal. We're going to be carrying the previous color, making sure that we're working over this yarn that we've been carrying. So I'm going into the back stitch, making sure to get that active yarn that we were just working with, pull my stitch through. So since I'm just working on the point of the heart, it's time for me to already change color again. What we need to do is drop that white, bring in the main color again. We need to make sure that we're going to catch that white yarn that we just worked with, as well as this yarn that we've been carrying all along. This one's pretty easy because it's already attached. It stays right in place for you, so it's really not that complicated. Normally here you would be taking that white and carrying it along for the next row, but with this kind of technique here, you don't need to do that. You can actually drop that now, and now just continue on. Working the back loop, making sure that you're catching that band of yarn there. We're in the last stitch, pull the yarn through. Grab that last stitch and pull through all 3 loops. Okay, this is what you have on the back. Now it's time to bring in my second color, my white. I'm just going to drop that main color, and I'm going to bring in the white, and I'm going to make my stitch. Okay, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that stretch of yarn and pull it across to where I know I'm going to finish that last stitch on that row. For this heart, I need to do white, white, white. So I'm pulling this white yarn to the back of that third stitch there. Doesn't have to be too tight or too loose, just very comfortable. Again, if you're working on a larger piece, you can use little hairpins or clips, but I really don't find it necessary. My main color is there underneath everything. I'm going to carry that along. Working into that back loop. Pull the yarn through. I'm just catching everything in behind. As you can see, even that little stretch there. It's time for me to change colors again. So I'm going to drop that white and bring in the main color. And I'm not going to carry that white anymore. I'm just dropping it for the next row. Yarn over, pull through. And now I'm back to my usual routine. Just carrying and making sure to catch that stretch of yarn there. And this is what you'll have on the back. Let's do another row just so you get the idea. It's time for me to bring in the white. And as you can see, that gap is going to get wider and wider. It doesn't matter. Just bring that white all the way over, or whatever color you're working with. Pull that yarn through. Just pull that to where you know you're going to be working that final stitch on that row to make it reach. Not too loose, not too tight. Making sure to catch that main color. I'm working that last stitch. And it's time to switch colors again. So dropping that white, not worrying about it anymore. Bringing in that new color, main color. And now we're done. And we just continue on to the end of the row. And this is what you'll have on the back side. You'll have this little loop here where you carried your yarn. And as you can see, each row you'll be taking it further and further along. And the same thing will happen if you're working with that color more often, like if you're dropping it and bringing it back in, dropping it and bringing it back in. You'll just be carrying that color along whenever you need it. So basically that's all there is to it. You're just going to be using the concept for that main color, but applying it to your secondary and third colors as you're working. I hope you enjoyed this video. I always love finding different hacks and shortcuts. And if you do too, here are a couple of videos that I think you'll enjoy. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.